Which numbers do we want to see, do, go over, have questions about? A lot of 1s and 5s, and then I saw a 3, so we'll do those. 1 and 3 can't be done on Desmos. 5 can, so I'll try that one. I think that's the only one on this one that can be done on Desmos. Okay, so for number 1, domain, you're looking left to right. So furthest point to the left would start at 2. And then it keeps going up and to the right, so that would be x is greater than or equal to 2 for number 1. 3 has a lot of negatives, so be careful. But you are just combining the terms, distributing, combining the terms. We have negative 12x minus 6 minus 2x plus 6 plus 15x minus 20. And then combine your x's, combine your constants. So negative 12x minus 2x is negative 14x. Negative 14x plus 15x is x. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. And 0 minus 20 is negative. So x minus 20 was your condensed, simplified answer. Questions on that one? Okay. And then, if you weren't able to try this in Desmos for 5, that's okay. So in Desmos, what you would do is type in those 2 points. I don't know what I did there. Someone read me off what those 2 points were. 3 and 2 and 0. Okay, so it'll plot those 2 points, and then I'm going to write in the slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And add in sliders. We can count the slope of these 2 points. So go up to the right one. So my slope is going to be 2. We just have to change the y-intercept so that it goes through those 2 points. So it looks like if my y-intercept got lower, or that it shifted down, it should go through those points. So let's say I just guessed and said negative 5. It went past it a little bit, so if I go back, negative 4, it goes through those points. So the equation for 5 should be y equals 2x minus 4. Which is. So remember, if you're doing this one from Desmos, say that you use Desmos. If you were doing it algebraically, you would have had to find the slope and then use your point slope or slope intercept formula to find your y-intercept. Questions on that? Look at your course calendar. You may have noticed it is 2-sided. This is your calendar for the rest of the year. So, a couple things to take notice. We are, the next month or so, we're going to be flying. We're going to be going fast. We're going to be going through a lot of things. So, in all of that time, please go back and watch videos if you miss something. Have Canvas up if you need something. Have the filled-in notes ready so you can write anything you may have missed. Come see me with any questions you have. You will still have Khan Academies all the way through. So make sure you're staying on top of those. Some of them will be a lot,
due on a Friday, so when I say do them ahead of time, it's for your benefit, so you're not having to do like 5 or 6 due on a Friday, so you do some over time. You'll see that all your tests for the next 4 units that we're about to go through up until the SOL, we're testing all of that stuff after the SOL. So we will talk more about that when we get there, but for now we got to get through this stuff, do SOL practice, so we'll be doing shark bites throughout that, the SOL practice, other SOL practice, and then once we finish doing the lesson stuff, we'll just be doing SOL practice. So all of that stuff. So it's going to feel like a lot. I just need you guys to bear with me, stay with me, ask questions, come get help, all of those things. What questions do we have right now? And, of course, some of the dates are tentative because I don't know when your SOL is yet or your final, things like that. So today we're going to be doing a lot. So I need you to focus, make sure you're paying attention, writing. We're going to start with these notes. Go through some different problems in this and then move on to something else. You may be familiar with this. I believe inequalities is covered before you get to high school, but to what extent, I don't know. So it may be reviews for you, it may not be. So for this part, we need to use an open circle for strictly less than or strictly greater than signs, and a closed circle for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to signs. Part of this will be, do you know how to graph them? Matthew, close your laptop. So look at the sign you're given. So for number 1, it's strictly less than, so that would be an open circle at 3, going to the left. Usually the way it's pointing is the way you're going to draw. I say usually because that's not always the case, but most of the time that's the case. So then for 3, would that be open or closed? You guys can say it out loud. Closed. Closed. At 7, going to the right. Everything x is greater than or equal to 7 means it's everything above 7, starting at 7 and above. Kind of like your domain, but in a different format, because this is really talking about your different solutions. It's everything 7 and above. Questions so far? Okay. And then the other part is, well, you have to be able to write it. So how would I write, and the opposite of what we just said, a 7? X is less than or equal to 0. X is less than or equal to 0 because it's closed. So equal to is going to the left, so less than. What about 8? How would we write that? Matthew? Yes. Greater than, because it's open, it's on the line, so it looks weird, but it is open, and then it's going to the right, so greater than. Questions on how to write it or graph it so far? There is a rule for solving inequalities. You must flip the inequality symbol when you multiply or divide by a negative number. So I'm going to give you an example of that, and then we'll do an example, and then it'll probably be time for lunch. So off to the side, I'm going to have you write negative 2x is greater than 4. It's a problem I made up.
if I were to solve this, I would have to divide both sides by -2. And when I do that, anytime I'm dividing by a negative, the sign changes direction. So it doesn't become an equal to, it will still be whatever type it was before, it will just change direction. But that's when the number you're dividing by is negative. Not if the number that you're dividing, I think I said that backwards. The number you're dividing is negative, then you flip the sign. If the number you're dividing by is negative, then you don't. So I'm going to rewrite that as positive 2x is greater than -4 on the other side where you have space. And do the same thing, solve for x, divide both sides by 2. But in this case, the sign would not change direction. So you have to know the difference. Questions on that before we do an example? So we're going to do 9. What's nice about solving inequalities is that it's really the same as solving equations. There's just that rule we have to remember. So we're trying to get x by itself. What would be our first step? Subtract 2 on both sides. So we have 3x is less than -6. And then as we were just doing, divide both sides by 3. So that x is less than -2. Our sign would not change in this case. So here, this number is a negative. Even though this one is, we didn't divide by a negative. The number we were dividing by was negative. Okay. Then you have a number line, it's blank, you're going to fill it in. I usually put this number in the middle. You don't have to put it in the middle, put it wherever you want. And then you can count by whatever you want, 1s, 2s, 5s, halves, whatever. Fill it in, make sure it's all the way filled in. Would this be an open or a closed circle? Open. At -2, going to the left or to the right? To the left, yes. What questions do we have so far? On the next page, we're going to talk about a different type of notation. So when we were doing domain and range and what we were just doing, writing the answer at the end, that's all set notation. But now we're going to talk about interval notation. So with our interval notation, you're going to be using parentheses and brackets. If you have an open circle or you had strictly less than, strictly greater than symbols in your problem, we're going to be using parentheses, and that'll make more sense when we actually do it. If we had a closed circle or less than or equal to, greater than or equal to symbols, we're going to be using square brackets. And then when something goes to infinity or negative infinity, we always use parentheses. And we'll talk about what that means here in a second. So looking at number 1, how would we start that? Distributing. Now that's not the only way you could do this because you could divide both sides by 4, but that doesn't always work. But distributing works. Then it's very much like the problem we just did. Get rid of the 12 by subtracting. Get rid of the 4 by dividing. When I divide both sides by 4, will the sign change? No. So go ahead and graph that on your number line. pick whatever numbers you want to fill this in. Would this be open or closed? Open. At -9, going to the left or to the right? Right. This is everything greater than. So we'll have time to write the notation and then it'll be time to lunch. So the interval notation, we're looking at left to right. Where does this start? -9 is open, so we're going to use a parenthesis. Where would this end? If it kept going to the right. Infinity. And you would draw a parenthesis. That was not a good idea. So that's how we would write our interval notation. So we'll do another one when we get back from lunch. Do we have any questions on one before we go to the next one? Okay, let's try 4 on this page. How would we start that one? Be careful with your negatives. So -8x plus 8 minus x is less than or equal to -28. What would we do next? -8x minus x, so -9x. Get rid of the 8 by subtracting. We have -36. Divide both sides by -9. When we divide by -9, will our sign change? Yes. And it'll become positive. So will this be open or closed? Closed at 4. Fill in your numbers, and then will that go to the left or to the right? To the right. So very much like our last one, but a little different. So where does this one start? 4. And it's closed, so this one is going to have a bracket. And then where does it end if it keeps going? Yes, infinity. And that would be a parenthesis. So sometimes you'll have a mixed answer. Sometimes it'll be parenthesis and bracket. Sometimes it'll both be parenthesis, or sometimes both bracket. Depends. Questions on that one? Say that one more time. This word, yes, because the 4 is closed. Is that what you were asking? Why there was a bracket there?
I thought that was
Good. Okay. Yeah, this side is, but infinities are always parentheses, no matter what. Cameron?
So you're basically saying that
Yes, every single time. Anytime you use the infinity symbol, negative or positive, you'll always use parentheses. Other questions on that one? Flip over to the back. We're going to do 10. This is like the hardest this is going to get. So if you can do this, you can really do all of these problems. How would we start this? Distribute on both sides at the same time. Be careful with your signs. So -3x minus 3 minus 2x is greater than -4x plus 8 minus 2. What would be our next step? on both sides on the same side. So negative 3x minus 2x would give us negative 5x. 8 minus 2 would give us 6. Positive 6.
And then just like when you're solving equations, here you have choices. What would we do next?
Okay, by doing what? Adding 4x. So you said, okay. And you have choices. You could do it the other way. It does not matter. So let's say we add 4x to both sides. Then we have to get rid of the 3 by adding it to the other side. So this would give us negative x is greater than 9. Divide both sides by negative 1. Would the sign change here?
Yes.
Open or close?
Open.
And then going to the left or going to the right? Left. Now this one's different than the other ones, but same process. Where would this one start if it keeps going to the left? Negative infinity. So parenthesis. Where does that end? Negative 9. Parenthesis or bracket? Parenthesis because it's open.
But had it been closed, that would have been a bracket. What questions do we have on that?
Why didn't we put negative 9 first? Because we're looking at this left to right, and this keeps going to the left, so the furthest point to the left is Alex.
I still don't get how we determine how we go left or right.
Oh, from here. So I would say, if you're not sure, think about numbers. Would negative, I'm just putting out a number, would negative 5 be less than negative 9 or greater than? Greater than. So that means if negative 5 is over here, I can't go that way. I have to go the other way. So you could think about it like that if you're not sure. Pick another number. Is negative 20 less than negative 9? Yes. So because negative 20 is on this side, it would have to go that way.
Other questions on that one?
Go to the next page. Write in these things. So you'll need to know what inequality words go with what symbols. So as you're writing, I'm going to try and come up with some examples. Some of them won't be that good, but so at least is greater than or equal to. I need at least 8 hours of sleep. So I need 8 hours of sleep to be functional. I could use more and that'd be great, but if I use any less, I probably won't be great. So you could always go more with at least. At most, less than or equal to, that should have a line under it very much. I had an example for at most. You have at most 7 teachers. You could have less than that if you have the same teachers who teaches like the same class or different classes, but you won't have more than 7 unless you're taking more than 7 classes. In the traditional sense, you have 7 at most 7 teachers. No more than and no less than are opposites, so when you see them, think the opposite. So no more than is less than or equal to, no less than is greater than or equal to. And then more than and less than are what things? More than, greater than, less than, less than. We're going to do a few of these examples and then jump to something else. going to start with the first example. What's nice about these word problems, and I know we just did word problems with systems and did word problems a while back, the process is the same. Look for important information, define your variable, set up your inequalities, solve. So in this first one, Keith has $500 in a savings account at the beginning of the summer. He wants to have at least, so it's going to tell you somewhere one of those inequality words, $200 at the end of the summer. He withdraws, that's important for when you start to set it up, $25 per week for food, clothing, and movie tickets. How many weeks can he withdraw money from his account? So our variable for this would again be what we don't know, the number of weeks, so I can call that W. And then we have to see which of these numbers would be the total. You would think this one because it's more, but because this is the amount he wants at the end of the summer, that's what we need, the 200. Which symbol would tell us at least? Greater than or equal to. So when we write that symbol, it's going to be whatever our inequality equation is, has to be greater than or equal to 200. That's how we're going to set that up. So if he starts off with 500 and he's withdrawing money, what operation are we using? Subtraction. So it's going to be 500 minus 25. And then we can solve it just like a normal problem. Subtract 500 to both sides. Divide both sides by negative 25. Your sign is going to change. And what would that number be? So because the sign changed, that means he cannot withdraw money more than 12 weeks. Because if he withdraws money the 13th week, he won't have the 200 months. So it started off as a at least. It's still at least for the money wise, but it's at most for the number of weeks. You can withdraw at most up to 12 weeks. Cannot withdraw more than 12 weeks. If he wants to keep at least $200. So we're done. Questions on that one before we do another? Start reading the second one if you haven't already. So important things you should have seen were the flat rate of $1.75. We talked about that a while back when we started doing word problems. That's your, even if she gets in the cab and goes taxi and goes around the block, not even a mile, she would still get charged that $1.75. The plus tells us what operation we're using, the 0.65 per mile. At most is our inequality word, and then the $10. And then, of course, we're looking for how far she could travel. So let's call how far she could travel in miles, the number of miles.
Our total here would be 10. She can't spend more than what she has, so 10. And then our symbol for at most would be what? Less than or equal to. So that means our inequality equation that we come up with has to be less than or equal to 10. Anyone have an idea as to how we would set this up? Andrew? And then we would solve. .65m is less than or equal to 8.25. And then divide that. You good? It's like a long decimal. Just tell me what it starts at. So with things like this, you have to think about, can miles be decimals? Can miles be decimals? Yes. So in this case, we can leave it as a decimal. If you ask yourself that question and it can't be a decimal, like if we're talking about people or something that you can't have decimals for, you would have to think about, could you round up or not? So here, she could travel 12.69 miles and not go over her limit, but if she drives or travels 12.7 miles, she'll go over her $10 limit and won't have enough money to pay for her tax. So this would be a case where you would have to round down if that were the case. Like we couldn't round up to 13 because she would definitely go over her $10 limit, but 12 would be fine. Questions on this one? And then we're going to do one more. But I'll let you guys choose between 3 or 4. Which of those do we want to do? 3, okay. So he wants to subscribe to a meal subscription service. Each meal costs $15.99 plus a one-time fee or one-time shipping cost of $9.99. He can spend no more than $100. How many meals could he buy? So let's call M the number of meals. What would our total in this be? 100. And no more than. What symbol would we use? Alyssa? Less than or equal to. We cannot spend more than we have. And then anyone want to take a guess how we would write the rest of the inequality? And then we would solve. Less than or equal to, what is that, 9101? 9101. And divide. But 6 would be too much because we would go over this number. So we have to run down to 5. Questions on your word problems? I'll let you write down this definition. So the next lesson is on compound inequalities, where, as the name probably suggests, there are two inequalities or more joined together with the words and or the word or. We're just going to talk about one of them today, and then the other, and then something else on Friday. Or inequalities have a tendency to graph apart, and we'll talk about what that means here in a moment. So it gives you an example. We'll talk about that first, and then we'll do an actual example. The example would be like your answer. You worked it down to get this. When you get something like this, you're going to graph both pieces, like you would a normal thing, but on the same graph. So this one would be closed at -2, going to the left. This one would be open at 3, going to the right. So when it says graph apart, it looks like that. Matthew, show your left. The interval notation, you're still reading left to right. Furthest left would still be -infinity. But then it stops at -2, it's closed, so bracket. Then you would write the word or. It starts again at 3, but that one's open, so parentheses. And then it keeps going to infinity. So when you write the interval notation, it'll have like 2 parts. What questions do we have on that before we do an actual example? So when you're solving OR inequalities, you'll have 2 different things. You're not going to do what you do to one side. You're not doing the same thing to both sides. So what you do to one, don't do to the other. They are 2 separate inequalities. You can solve them at the same time or separately. Does not matter. I'm going to solve them at the same time. So for this one, I would add 4 to both sides. For this one, if I'm trying to get x by itself, I would divide 2 to both sides, so they're different. And then I would write my answers. X is less than -3. Bring down the word or. X is greater than or equal to 6. Adam, did you put your phone up? Questions on that so far? Then you're going to graph it. So open at -3, going to the left, closed at 6, going to the right. How would we start that interval notation?
But
Where does it start at? Negative infinity, so that would be a parenthesis. Parenthesis or bracket? Parenthesis. Write the word or. Go over the next one. Start. 6. Parenthesis or bracket? Bracket. And then where would it end? Infinity with parentheses. Kind of hard to see, but that is what that says at the end. Questions on that? We're going to do one more, and then we'll have time to, if you want to go back and do any other problem, we'll do that, and then we'll have time to practice. So this one at the bottom. So again, solve them separately. For the one on the left, I'm going to start by distributing. Negative 6x minus 3 is less than negative 15. I'm going to solve just this one. If you want to solve them both at the same time, go for it. Add 3 to both sides. We have negative 6x is less than negative 12. And divide with the sign change. And it would become positive. For these problems, don't assume that whatever's on the left is going to go to the left because the sign might change. So always work it out. Then for the other one, you could do this multiple ways. Either add the x and then get rid of the 5, or subtract 1 and then divide by negative. Whichever one. I'm going to subtract 1. And then divide both sides by negative 1. Sign changes again. And then I'm going to rewrite this so that it's least to greatest. So it's going to be in the order that I graph it and write the interval notation. That way it's less confusing. And how would we graph this?
Close circle over negative 0.
Mm-hmm.
And so to the right.
Mm-hmm. And the other one? And then how would we write this interval notation? Teacher? Next. Person? That's what I would write next.
Yeah, or.
Or, okay, and then 2 parentheses. Questions on that one? Are there any questions or inequalities, multi-step inequalities, inequality word problems that we want to see, go over, have questions about? Melissa. Say that one more time. I heard part of that, not all of that. Oh, so it's in order. From least to greatest. So that way when we graph it, it looks just like this, and this looks just like this, and they all match. That's really the only reason. Any other
other questions? Or anything we want to see you go over? So for the remainder, if your Wi-Fi is working, I know there was issues earlier, you could try to work on the Khan Academy that's due when we come back. That way you don't have to worry about it. It's multi-step linear inequalities and two variable inequalities word problems. If it's not working on your computer, you can grab your phone. You can also be working on the SOL A4CF through A5AC. If you need to finish the test, you could also do that now, but you don't have a whole lot of time. Or work on retake work, but you have some soon to do that. You would also be working in the practice in this.